That's the sentence I keep hearing in my head, over and over again. It plays like a whisper that doesn't fade, even when I close my eyes. Because the truth is, it wasn't one big moment that broke me. It was the quiet, steady way my sister learned to become me, while I was too busy making sure she never fell. I still remember the morning it started, though I didn't know it then. It was raining that day, the kind of rain that clings to everything, leaving the air smelling like wet earth and second chances. My sister, Lila, had called me at 6 in the morning. She sounded out of breath, anxious. "Can you come over? Please, Mia. It's important." I threw on the first thing I could find, my old gray sweater and jeans, and drove across town to her apartment. When I got there, she was standing barefoot on her balcony, a mug of coffee steaming in her hands, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. She looked at me and smiled, that same soft, mirror smile I'd seen since we were kids. And she said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." If I'd known what those words would come to mean later, I think I would have turned around and left right then. Lila and I were identical twins, but we were never identical in spirit. She was the performer, the bright one, the talker, the girl who could walk into a room and make everyone laugh. I was the one behind the camera, the quiet helper who reminded her of birthdays, who drove her home when she drank too much, who edited her college essays while pretending mine didn't matter as much. And I didn't mind. Not really. Because that's what love looks like when you grow up sharing everything. Even your silence. Our parents used to joke that Lila was the sunshine, and I was the steady ground. They weren't wrong. She burned bright. And I made sure she didn't burn out. By the time we were 30, our lives had gone in different directions. Lila was an event planner, loud, busy, always dressed in something that shimmered when she moved. I worked as a graphic designer from home, surrounded by muted colors and the hum of my computer fan. But even then, our lives were tangled together. She'd send me her presentation decks, ask me to fix her photos, design her logos. Always with a "You're the only one I trust, Mia." And every time I said yes, because I couldn't stand the thought of disappointing her. That morning on her balcony, she told me she'd gotten a big client, a luxury wedding she'd been fighting for. She wanted me to design the full visual campaign, invitations, website, everything. She'd even promised me a cut of her earnings this time. I remember smiling at that, half relief, half pride. Maybe she was finally seeing me not as her helper, but as her partner. We spent hours that day talking over coffee, our laughter echoing through her small apartment. Her cat curled between us, the scent of cinnamon candles in the air. It felt good. Normal. Like we were little girls again, hiding under blankets and dreaming up futures where we both got to shine. I didn't know that was the last time things would feel equal between us. A few months later, the campaign launched. And it was everywhere. Social media, wedding blogs, even a small feature in a lifestyle magazine. Everyone praised the design, the soft watercolor theme, the typography, the photography direction. It was mine. Every brushstroke, every detail. But on the article, the credits read, "Creative direction by Lila Hart." No mention of me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A simple oversight. She'd never take credit for my work. She couldn't. I called her that night, my voice trembling a little as I said, "Hey, did you see the article?" They must have missed my name. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause, before she answered, "Oh yeah, I saw that. It's just easier if the client sees one name, you know? You're still my partner, Mia. Don't worry about the credit. People don't read the fine print anyway." She laughed, softly, like she was smoothing the edges of something sharp. And I let it go. Because that's what I did. I let things go for her. Weeks passed, and she kept bringing me more projects. Some I was paid for. Most I wasn't. She'd say things like, "You're better at this than I am, honestly. I'd be lost without you." And I believed her. Until one night, I attended one of her weddings. A glittering event at a vineyard outside the city. She'd invited me, said she wanted me to see our work in action. So I went, proud, nervous, dressed in my softest blue dress. When I arrived, I noticed something odd. The staff, the florists, the photographers, they all greeted her with familiarity. But when she introduced me, she said, This is my sister Mia. She helps out sometimes. Helps out. Not co-designer. Not partner. Just helps out. The word stung. But I smiled anyway. I always smiled for her. Then during dinner, I overheard one of the bridesmaids gushing to Lila. I don't know how you come up with these designs. You're so talented. Lila smiled and said, yeah, I guess I just have an eye for it. That was the first time something broke inside me. Small, like a hairline crack in glass. Barely visible. But dangerous all the same that I didn't say anything that night. I went home, took off my dress, and sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. I stared at my reflection. Same face, same eyes. And wondered if maybe that's why it was so easy for her. We looked alike. She could wear my face, my ideas, my effort. And no one would question it that I told myself I was being dramatic. That she didn't mean harm. That family doesn't steal from family. But deep down, I already knew this was the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to take back. The next morning, I got an email from a photographer I'd worked with on the campaign. He congratulated me, but addressed it to Lila. He wrote, "Your designs are genius, Lila. You've got real talent." I stared at the screen for a long time. My coffee went cold beside me. My heart beat slow, then fast, like it was trying to keep up with something it couldn't name. That's when I realized, somewhere between helping her and losing myself, I had stopped being visible. Even to the people who once knew my name, that I wish I could say I confronted her right then. That I stormed into her apartment and demanded to be seen. But that's not who I was. Not yet. I was still the quiet one. The reasonable one. The sister who believed that love meant keeping the peace. So instead, I did what I'd always done. I tried to make sense of it. Tried to be understanding. Maybe she just needed this. Maybe her career was finally taking off, and she couldn't risk sharing the spotlight. Maybe she'd make it up to me later. Those were the thoughts that kept me from calling her that night. They were also the same ones that kept me small. A few weeks passed before we met again. She invited me to her apartment to celebrate. Apparently, she'd landed another major client, a destination wedding for a celebrity couple. Her living room was filled with samples, ivory tablecloths, invitation prototypes, swatches of pastel ribbons. When I walked in, she hugged me tight. "Mia, this is all thanks to you," she said. Her perfume, gardenia and honey, wrapped around me. The same scent she'd worn since we were teenagers. I smiled, because what else could I do? But then she added casually, "I hope you don't mind, but the client wants consistency. So we'll just use my name again, just for this one. It's easier." T's easier. That phrase again. The one that always came right before she took something from me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Sure," I said softly. "If that's what you need." She grinned. "You're the best. I'll make it up to you." And maybe she really believed that. Maybe she didn't even realize what she was doing. But that day, I left her apartment with a strange heaviness in my chest. The kind you can't shake off no matter how much you tell yourself you're fine. At home, I started to notice small changes. People online began tagging her in designs that were mine. She started using the phrases I used in emails, even my writing style. Her Instagram captions, once bubbly and chaotic, now read with my voice. Clean, thoughtful, subtle. She'd even posted a photo of her home office, with one of my sketches lying open on the desk, and captioned it, "Late night designing. Worth it." I stared at that picture for a long time. The comments beneath it were full of praise. "You're so talented. You're such an inspiration. She's unstoppable." Every word felt like another invisible erasure. Another piece of me dissolving into her shadow. The turning point came at a family dinner a few months later. Our parents had invited us over to celebrate Dad's birthday. Mom had made her famous roast chicken. The one that filled the house with rosemary and garlic and the sound of comfort. Lila came in late, as always, carrying an expensive bottle of wine and a story that made everyone laugh. I sat beside her, quietly watching, feeling the ache of something I couldn't name. Halfway through dinner, Mom brought up the magazine feature. "Lila, darling, your wedding campaign was stunning. Everyone at my book club was talking about it." I looked up, waiting. waiting for her to say it, to tell them it had been our work. But she just smiled and said, "Oh, thank you, Mom. It was a lot of work, but it paid off." I felt my fork slip from my fingers. It clattered against the plate, loud in the silence that followed. Everyone looked at me. I forced a smile. "So clumsy." Dad chuckled. "You've always been the quiet one, Mia. Let your sister enjoy her moment." And so I did. I let her have it, all of it. But inside, something cold and final was forming. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my car in their driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel, tears burning my eyes. I didn't know if I was angrier at her or at myself for letting it happen. I opened my phone and scrolled through her page again. Every post, every story, every piece of content had a piece of me in it. Even the tone of her words. It was my rhythm, my phrasing, my quiet touch. But no one would ever know that. Because to them, I didn't exist. That's when I realized she wasn't just borrowing my work anymore. She was slowly becoming me. I decided I needed space. For the first time in my life, I didn't answer her calls. Didn't respond to her texts that said things like, "Need your opinion," or "Can you fix this design?" I let the messages pile up. Each one a small act of rebellion I wasn't sure I was ready for. A week later, she showed up at my apartment. Her knock was sharp, impatient. When I opened the door, she stood there with that familiar smile. But there was something behind it this time. Something almost wary. "Hey stranger," she said. "You've been ignoring me." "I've been busy," I replied, stepping aside. She walked in like she owned the place. Her perfume filling the small room. Her heels clicking against the hardwood. "Busy doing what?" she asked, laughing lightly. "You're the one who always says I overwork myself." I didn't answer. She turned to look at me, tilting her head like she used to when we were little, and trying to read my thoughts. "Mia, what's wrong? You've been weird lately." I took a breath. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "Why did you take credit for my work, Lila?" The air between us changed instantly. The laughter left her face. She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "The wedding campaign. The article. The clients. You've been passing my designs off as your own." She frowned, defensive. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. We've always worked together." "Yes," I said, "but I've always been invisible." There was silence, thick and tense. Then she laughed, but it wasn't the warm laugh I knew. It was sharp, almost mocking. "Mia, you're overreacting. No one's stealing anything from you. You're good at what you do, sure, but I'm the one who gets the clients, who manages everything. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I whispered. "For what? For being erased?" Her smile faltered for just a second. Then she picked up her purse and said, "You're tired. Call me when you're done being jealous." And with that she left. The door clicked shut behind her. And in that sound, I knew something between us had ended. Something that could never be mended the same way again. That night, I stayed awake until dawn. I didn't cry. I just stared at my empty phone screen, thinking about all the years I'd given her. My time, my work, my faith. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe love shouldn't cost this much. Did I end the days that followed? Silence became my companion. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that hums softly while you make tea or fold laundry. No, this silence was heavier. It pressed down on my chest, made even the ticking of the wall clock sound accusatory. Every small thing reminded me of her. The font samples on my desk, the shared folder we'd used for projects. Even the scent of her perfume that still clung to my scarf. I tried to work, but the designs came out wrong. Too sharp, too angry. I'd delete them all and start again. There was a weight in my hands now. The weight of knowing that everything I created could be taken from me, painted over with her name. Then one morning, I received an email that froze me. It was from a new client, someone I'd never met. The subject line read, "Following up on our call." Inside, the message was short. "Hi Lila, just confirming that the logo revisions you mentioned will be ready by Friday. Thanks again for fitting me in on such short notice. You're amazing." There it was again. Lila. Not me. Except the email was sent to my address. My personal one. The one I'd never shared with her. I scrolled down and saw a trail of forwarded messages. Somewhere along the line, she'd started using my designs and sending them out as hers. But in the process, one of the clients had mistakenly found the original creator. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, my pulse thudding in my ears. It wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was intentional. She'd crossed from carelessness into theft that I didn't reply to the client. Not yet. Instead, I spent that entire day digging through everything: old emails, shared folders, contracts. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. She hadn't just borrowed from me. She'd built her entire business using my work. Half the designs on her website were mine. Some even still had my original file names buried in the metadata. It was like discovering a trail of fingerprints that all pointed back to me. I wanted to call her, to scream, to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. Not fear. Not even love. It was clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as my sister. Not as the girl I'd once protected. But as someone who knew exactly what she was doing, and thought I'd never stop her. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was soft, cheerful. "Sweetheart, are you coming to Lila's showcase next week? She's being honored by the Wedding Guild for her designs. Isn't that exciting?" I almost dropped the phone. "She's what?" "Oh, didn't she tell you?" Mom laughed. "She's getting the Rising Star Award. You two are so alike. I'm sure your talent rubbed off on her." I don't remember how I ended that call. Just the sound of Mom's voice fading as I sat there, staring at the floor. The Rising Star Award. For my work. My designs. That was when something inside me hardened. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The night of the award ceremony, I decided to go. Not as a guest. Not even as a sister. But as the person who finally deserved to be seen. I wore a simple black dress. The kind that didn't draw attention, but demanded quiet respect. My hair pulled back, no jewelry, no perfume. Just me. The event was held at a downtown ballroom, golden lights shimmering against crystal chandeliers. As I walked in, I saw her immediately. Lila, radiant in a silver gown, laughing as photographers circled her. For a moment my breath caught. She looked like me. Exactly like me. It was surreal. Watching my own reflection move, smile, and charm. People whispered her name, praising her artistry, her vision. Every compliment cut deeper, but I stayed still. At one point she saw me. Her eyes widened just a little, not in surprise, but in discomfort. Then, as if nothing had happened, she smiled that polished smile and turned back to her admirers. When her name was announced, she stepped onto the stage, accepting the glass plaque with poised gratitude. The host read from the script. Recognizing her innovative designs and artistic excellence, the Wedding Guild proudly honors Lila Hart. The audience clapped. I didn't. I just watched. Then she began to speak. Her voice trembled slightly at first, whether from nerves or guilt, I couldn't tell. "I'm so honored," she said. "This has been years of hard work, sleepless nights, and passion. I couldn't have done it without the people who believed in me." She paused. Her eyes swept over the crowd and landed on me. For a brief second, her confidence faltered. Then she looked away. That was my moment. The silence stretched, and I could feel my pulse steadying. I stood up. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for the people near me to turn their heads. And in a calm, clear voice I said, "You're right, Lila. You couldn't have done it without me." A ripple of confusion moved through the room. She froze. The microphone slipped slightly in her hand. "Mia," she said quietly, forcing a laugh. "You're here. Everyone, this is my sister." But I didn't let her finish. "Your twin," I said. "The one who designed the very work you're being awarded for tonight." The room went still. Even the music stopped. Someone in the front row whispered, "What's going on?" Another voice said, "They look identical." I stepped forward, my heart calm, my voice steady. All those designs, the logos, the themes, the campaigns you've seen on her website, they were mine. Every single one. She tried to interrupt. "Mia, stop it." "No," I said quietly. "You've taken enough of my silence." I could feel my hands trembling, but my voice didn't shake. "I told them everything. How we'd worked together, how she'd slowly erase me, how the credits disappeared, how the awards came with my name missing. When I was done, the room was quiet. You could hear the clinking of a single glass being set down somewhere in the back. Lila stood there, her face pale, her eyes searching for a way out. Finally, she managed to say, "She's confused. We collaborated. She's just." But the host, a woman from the guild, interrupted her. "Is that true?" she asked gently. "Do you have proof of collaboration?" I reached into my bag and handed over a folder, emails, drafts, original files with timestamps, metadata, everything. Lila's hands started to shake. The host flipped through the papers, her expression darkening. After a moment, she turned to the microphone. "I think we need to pause the program." And just like that, it was over. The applause that had filled the room minutes earlier was replaced by murmurs. Quiet, uneasy, sharp. Lila looked at me then, not angry, not even apologetic. Just hollow. Like she finally saw the wall she'd built crumbling in front of her. That night, I walked out of that ballroom alone. The air outside was cold, crisp with the scent of rain. I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was tired. Because the truth is, when you finally stand up for yourself, you don't. You don't feel powerful at first. You just feel the ache of all the years you didn't. I didn't see Lila for weeks after that night. The fallout spread quickly, faster than I ever expected. Within 2 days, the event videos were online. People compared our faces, our portfolios, our voices. And the truth, quiet and undeniable, started to surface. Some defended her, said it was just a misunderstanding between sisters. Others weren't so kind. They called her a fraud, a thief, a manipulator. I didn't join any of the conversations. I didn't correct or confirm anything. I stayed quiet, not out of fear, but because for once, silence belonged to me. Still, there was a strange grief that came with it. Because even though she'd wronged me, she was still my sister. The girl who'd once braided my hair. Who'd stayed up late eating cereal with me on the floor. Who'd cried when our father got sick. That version of her, the one I'd loved, was gone. One night, about 3 weeks later, I came home to find a note slipped under my door. It was written in her handwriting. Neat, careful. "Mia, please. Just talk to me." I almost threw it away, but something in me hesitated. So, a few days later, I agreed to meet her, at the small cafe where we used to go after school. It was almost empty when I arrived. The smell of coffee and baked bread hanging in the air. She was already there, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. When she looked up, I barely recognized her. Her makeup was gone, her hair unbrushed, eyes swollen and red-rimmed. For the first time, she looked like my reflection again. Not the polished version she'd turned herself into, but the raw, unfiltered one. "Mia," she whispered. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I sat across from her, quietly. She fidgeted with her cup, her fingers trembling. "I was just trying to make it," she said. "You've always been the talented one. You know that, right? But people notice me. They always have. I thought if I just borrowed a little of what you had, maybe I could finally be enough." Her words hung there, small, pathetic, honest. And for a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You didn't borrow, Lila," I said softly. "You stole." She flinched. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Yes, you did," I said, not harshly, just true. "Because every time I started to shine, you dimmed me a little more. You knew I'd never fight back." Her eyes filled with tears. "I lost everything, Mia. The clients, the awards, my reputation. You ruined me." I stared at her, stunned at how easily she twisted it. "I didn't ruin you," I said. "You did that yourself." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of milk steaming at the counter filled the silence. Outside, rain had started again. A soft, steady drizzle tapping against the glass. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry." The words were barely audible. But even then, I didn't know if they were meant for me. Or for herself. I nodded slowly. "I forgive you," I said. "But I won't forget." Her eyes widened. "You forgive me?" "Yes," I said. "Because carrying hate would keep you inside me. And I want to be free of you." She looked down, her shoulders shaking. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I don't know who I am without you. That broke something in me, not out of pity, but out of recognition. Because I'd once felt the same way. Our whole lives, we'd been halves of a whole. But somewhere along the way, I'd learned how to exist without her. She never did. We sat there for a long while, watching the rain blur the world outside. Eventually she stood. I'll stay out of your way, she said. I promise. She left without another word, and I watched her disappear into the gray street, umbrella trembling in the wind. That was the last time I saw her. The weeks after that were quieter, peaceful in a strange, empty way. Her business shut down quietly. She moved out of the city. And for the first time in my life, my name stood alone on my work. At first, I didn't know what to do with that kind of freedom. It felt almost foreign. I'd spent so long defining myself in contrast to her, being the steady one, the shadow, the support. Now I was simply me. I started rebuilding from the ground up. A new portfolio, new clients. This time, I signed my name boldly on every page. People began to notice. Not because I was loud or showy, but because my work carried a quiet authenticity, the kind you can't fake or steal. And slowly, opportunities came. Small at first, then larger. Design collaborations, articles, even teaching offers. For the first time, I wasn't hiding behind anyone. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. One afternoon, months later, I received a message from a mutual friend. A short note. Lila's working at a small design studio in Portland. She's keeping a low profile. Seems different. I read it twice, then closed my phone. There was no anger left, no bitterness. Just quiet understanding. Because sometimes, losing everything is what finally teaches a person who they are. I went for a walk that evening. The sun was setting over the city, the sky melting into gold and violet. I passed by the old park where we used to play as kids. 2 little girls were sitting on the swings, laughing, one pushing the other, their laughter echoing through the air. And I smiled, because that's what Lila and I had once been. 2 halves, trying to make each other move. We just forgot to take turns. When I got home, I looked at the framed photograph on my desk. The 2 of us at 8 years old. Identical smiles, hands stained with ice cream. I traced the edges of it and whispered, I hope you find peace, Lila. I already have. And in that moment, I meant it. Time has a quiet way of softening things. Not erasing them, never that. But sanding the edges so you can finally hold your memories without bleeding. It's been 2 years since that night at the ballroom. Sometimes it still feels fresh. Like I could reach out and touch the moment when everything cracked open. Other days, it feels like a story that happened to someone else. A woman I used to be. Someone small and careful. Someone who lived in the shadow of someone she loved too much. Now when I look in the mirror, I see myself. Not my twin. Not the reflection of what someone else needed me to be. Just me. Mia Hart. The name stands on its own now. I run my own studio from a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just a bright room with high windows and the smell of coffee always lingering. My desk is covered in sketches and notebooks. And there's always music playing softly in the background. I've learned to love the sound of my own rhythm. The first year was hard. Every time I signed a new client, I'd feel that flicker of doubt. Would they think I was her? Would my name still be tied to what she'd done? But slowly, people started to know me for my work. They saw the difference. Where hers was shiny and calculated, mine was quiet, deliberate, human. And that was enough. Sometimes, when I teach design classes at the community center, young women ask me about confidence. How do you know when to stop helping people and start helping yourself? I always pause before answering, because that's the question I wish I'd asked sooner. I tell them, love isn't about disappearing for someone else. If you have to vanish to make someone shine, that's not love. That's control. They always listen carefully, eyes wide, as if they're hearing something forbidden yet familiar. I can see versions of myself in their faces. The girl who gave too much, stayed too long. Believed silence was the same thing as peace. It isn't. Silence, I learned, can be another way of being erased. About a month ago, I got an email with a familiar name in the subject line. Lila. For a long moment, I just stared at it, hands frozen above the keyboard. The message was short. Hey, I saw your work in the magazine. It's beautiful. I'm glad you're doing well. I hope one day we can talk, not as who we were, but as who we've become. El. There was no apology, no excuses, just recognition. And strangely, that was enough. I didn't reply. Not because I'm angry, because sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a quiet acceptance. A moment where the wound finally stops needing to be explained. That night, I went through our old family photos again. One of them, a faded picture of our 10th birthday, caught my eye. We're standing side by side in matching dresses, a single candle flickering between us on the cake. Lila's arm is wrapped around me, her smile wide and proud, mine smaller, softer. Even then you can see it, that unspoken dynamic between us. Her brightness, my steadiness, the sun and the ground. But now I understand something I didn't back then. Both are necessary. Even the brightest sun needs something solid to rise above. I used to think she took my life, but really I gave it to her, piece by piece, because I didn't know mine had value on its own. That was my mistake. But it was also my lesson. A few days ago, I met a new client at a cafe across town. As I waited for her to arrive, a young woman at the next table accidentally spilled her coffee across her sketchpad. She froze, eyes welling up. I handed her a napkin, smiling softly. Hey, it's okay. You can start again. Sometimes the second version is better. She looked at me, surprised, maybe comforted, and nodded. And I realized that was the first time in a long while I'd said something like that without sadness. Because now, I believe it. Starting over doesn't mean losing everything. It means finally owning it. Later that evening, I walked home through the park. The air smelled like rain, soft and metallic. A group of teenagers were taking photos by the fountain, laughing too loudly, faces lit by their phone screens. I smiled as I passed, remembering how Lila used to insist on taking twin selfies everywhere we went. She'd tilt her head just so. Say you and me, Mia. Always. Always. The word used to hurt. Now it just feels like a truth in past tense. Something that shaped me, but no longer defines me. When I got home, I made tea and sat by the window. The city lights glimmered like distant stars. And for a long while, I just watched them. My life isn't glamorous. It's not the kind of success that makes headlines or wins awards. But it's mine. Every part of it bears my signature, my hand, my heart, my quiet strength. And that's more than enough. Sometimes I think about her. Wonder where she lives now. What kind of mornings she wakes up to. Does she still look in the mirror and see me? Or has she finally learned to see herself? I don't know. But I hope she's learned what I did. That love without honesty is just dependency. And success without integrity is just noise. We spent our whole lives mirroring each other. Now we're both learning to stand as our own reflections. Two women. Two stories. No shadows. You know, for a long time, I thought forgiveness was something you gave to the other person. But what I've learned is, it's really a gift you give to yourself. Because when you hold on to anger, you keep standing in the same room where you got hurt. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk out of that room and close the door behind you. People often ask me, how could you forgive your sister after what she did? And the truth is, I didn't forgive her because she deserved it. I forgave her because I deserved peace. It took me years to understand that love isn't sacrifice, it's balance. You can care deeply for someone and still choose yourself. You can be kind without disappearing. And you can walk away without hate in your heart. I don't know if Lila will ever come back into my life. And if she does, I hope it's as her own person, not as my reflection. But either way, I'm okay. Because I finally learned that my story doesn't need her name to be whole. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever loved someone who took too much, someone who made you question your own worth, I want you to hear me clearly. You are allowed to take your life back. You are allowed to start again. And you don't need permission to shine. Tell me, would you have forgiven her? Or would you have walked away for good? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart tonight, remember to follow, so you don't miss the next time I sit down to tell you another one. Because stories, like healing, are best shared slowly, from one heart to another.